Hey everybody, Dave here, Hidden Free Investing, and welcome back to another video. So in this video, I'm going to go over my portfolio transformation changes I plan on making. I've been talking about this for quite a few weeks, or about 2 weeks now. And I know there's some people that are waiting for this update, and I think that people are going to be pretty satisfied with the changes I plan on making for my dividend portfolio. Matter of fact, I actually think about that I may actually rename the portfolio from dividend portfolio to something like investment portfolio or something like that, because honestly, it's not really just a dividend portfolio anymore, or it won't be. So I do think that people will be pretty satisfied with the change. It's going to cover dividends, going to cover income, it's going to cover growth, and I know there's a lot of people that have been beating me up over the several months talking about growth. Where's your growth? Where's your growth, right? And I honestly really don't care much about growth at this stage in my life. I am planning to retire next year in April of 2022, so obviously there's some different requirements for me in my portfolio versus somebody that has 20 to 30 years left or something like that. Well, they care about growth, right? So that's the reason why I don't normally care about growth. So I do care about income, and I do care about capital preservation. But, in this video, I will cover the changes, which is actually going to take care of the growth aspect too. So I do think that obviously everybody's going to be in a different boat and all that stuff, but in general, I think for me going forward and me retiring next year, this is the best strategy I've come up with so far. Now granted, I still could make some changes to the portfolio, as this is a work in progress. I've already started making changes in the portfolio, and a lot of those changes are going to still happen this month and next month, and then be finalized in April, May of next year when I get to roll over those 401ks. So let's not waste any time. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, here is the overview page here, and obviously if you've seen my videos before, you've seen this page quite a bit. So there's $524,000 in this dividend portfolio, and like I said, I might end up renaming the dividend portfolio to something else, but we'll see. So right now it generates about $25,454, about $2,121 per month, and then daily it's about 70 bucks. So that actually has come down. Obviously the tax deferred there is down to $90 a month when it was over $200 a month just a few weeks ago. So like I said, I've already started making changes, and that's what we're going to go through in this video. So right now net worth sits at 1.85, and that actually is important because with the next page we go to here, I'm basing everything off of a $2 million portfolio, which is what I think I'm going to have when I fire next year in April 2022. So we're about $150,000 away from that goal, and about 8 months away from that goal. So fire days left, 233 days. Yes, that actually did go up from last week's video. I actually, if we go over here to metadata, I raised it up to April 29, 2022, because that is the best day that I could come up with for me to actually quit work, to give me time to prepare for the Appalachian Trail hike and get out of this apartment, all that stuff in May. So I just increased the days by about 7-8 days, and so that's most likely going to be the final number there. And we go back here to overview, so 233 days left to fire. All right, and there's all the positions there. Obviously, there's some new positions there that you have not seen before. DGRO is a good example. QYLD, that's another one we'll talk about here in a second as well. So, all right, let's go over here to tools. And this is the page that we care about today. This is the page I'm going to be going over. Really don't actually talk about, I'm not going to, really talk about this Kager tool. That's just thrown in there from a previous tool that I've been using, but we don't really care about this over here either. But what we do care about are these three boxes right here, and we care about the portfolio totals here. Okay, so for my portfolio, for the taxable account, which is this box right here, this is what it's looking like. Okay, now granted, these numbers are subject to change because I may not hit the $2 million goal before I fire in about 8 months, right? This is the best guess that I could come up with. It's going to be close. It's going to be super close to being $2 million. It could be more, it could be less. And then I can adjust the numbers accordingly if I need to. So this is the best numbers that I could come up with here. So we got NUSI there, roughly about 200K in it. We got QYLD about $40,000. We got XYLD $40,000. We got DIVO about $175,000. We got DGRO in there. There actually is about 1 share or something in the portfolios. I just wanted to put it in there as a placeholder. And we'll talk about DGRO here in a second. We got JEPI there, $200,000. We got stocks, those are all individual positions. So if we go over here back to the dividend portfolio, the current portfolio, here is all the positions right here. So that is what we're talking about there. So all these individual positions up here, with the exception of O, because that actually is in a tax deferred account, those are all in the dividend portfolio. So let's go back here to tools. So that's what the stocks are, $115,000. I think there's about 117 in there right now, so I'm going to trim it out. Probably trim it down another $2,000, and so we'll have about $115,000 in stocks, individual positions, dividend payers, by the way. We got real estate notes there. I've done many videos, one video, I've just talked about it many a times. I got real estate notes there I have invested in, $325,000, and it generates about $22,000 of income per year. And then we got the M1 account there, which you've seen before, about $5,000 in there, which is what I project. And then we have the Fundrise account, which actually have a liquidation request in. So we're going to take that money out, and then I'm going to put the money back into the interval fund. So that'll actually cut out about 14 1099 DIVs, and then it'll just produce one of those from Fundrise. So one 1099 DIV instead of 14 or 15. Okay, so all that combined will provide about $6,000 in monthly income, about $73,000 in total income for the year, in total invested about $1.11 million. All right, so that's taxable side. So that, you know, I can live off that, right? And you're thinking, okay, what about taxes, Dave? Well, yes, I do have to pay taxes. I'm projecting taxes to be about $1,000 to about $1,300 at the most per month. So that'll still leave me about $4,700 to about $5,000 of income. You know, because a lot of this stuff up here is return on capital. Some of it actually is only 75% taxable, 25% taxable. Like DIVO, for example, is about 25% taxable. JEPI is kind of a mix. Some of it actually is NII income. Most of it is NII income, so that's net investment income. And there may be some capital gains in there as well. QYLD might be return on capital, XYLD might be return on capital, NUSI, I haven't quite figured that one out yet, but I will do an updated video next year when I figure out how exactly every one of these are taxed. Obviously the stocks there are just, you know, qualified dividends. There's nothing in this particular account that are not qualified dividends at all. Real estate notes are just interest income, so that's going to be taxed at the normal rate. So the way I look at it is not everything here is going to be taxed at the ordinary rate, but still, even if I was taxed $73,000 as ordinary rate, which is not going to be the case here, that is still better than what I've been doing over the last several years, the last 10 years or so. I've been crossing the $200,000 mark, which, you know, is a substantial amount of cash you got to pay. You got to pay the NIT tax as well, which is the Obamacare tax, the ACA tax, which is in addition to anything over $200,000. I'm single, so I'm not married, so obviously I get stuck at some lower numbers. But so $70,000, even if I had to pay, you know, $1,500 a month, which I don't think is going to be the case. I think it's going to be lower than that. That's a lot lower than I've had to pay over the last 10 years in taxes. Obviously, as the real estate notes get paid back, they're going to go into more things that are just more qualified or stuff that has return on capital, something like that. So when those get paid back, That $325,000 will go into DIVO, it'll go into NUSI, it'll go into JEPI, it might go into individual stocks, which are all tax preferable, right? Compared to just interest income, right? DIVO is only taxed at 25%. The other 75 is, I think, return on capital, if I'm not mistaken. So, all right. So that covers the taxable side there, okay? And we're not about to talk about the options here because, well, I'll talk about those probably at the end of the video. But so we do have an options account here, about $300,000 in there. And if I just paste this over there, that brings the income up to $9,000 a month. Obviously, it also increases my my tax, bracket that I'm going to be in as well. But it is free money the way I look at it too. I just have to generate $3,000 a month off of $300,000, which should be pretty easy to do with the Qs and a lot of the other things that I trade in there. But that is not real money. It's not money that I need, right? So that is just a kind of an example. If I threw that in there, it's $9,000 a month in income. And if I take it out, it's still $6,000 of coma money that I don't have to do anything for. There's some money coming in, okay? Now, I know what you're thinking, okay? You're thinking, Dave, why have I been trashing QYLD for months? And I have been, yes, I've been trashing QYLD for months. And trust me, I've been having some conviction issues for the last week or so saying, how can I get those out of my portfolio? And I did. I took those out. I put that $40,000 into NUSI, I put it into JEPI, I messed around, and honestly, it didn't make that big of a difference. It cut the income by, a couple $100 a month. But I figured, why not just have 40 grand in there? It's not a lot of money, right? It's not a ton amount of money, but it generates quite a bit of income, right? Like $4,000, $3,000, okay? So I feel like that $40,000 risk there is worth it. And I still don't really like QYLD. I don't like XYLD. I don't really like the Global X products in general. But I figured, I can risk that $40,000 there, even if it doesn't go up much. Because obviously JEPI there actually has quite a bit of growth to it. The stocks should have quite a bit of growth to it as well. DIVO should have some growth to it. DIVO up here, not DGRO. And NUSI may not have a lot of growth to it at all, but QYLD probably not going to be any growth at all. And then XYLD is not going to have much growth at all. So I didn't really want to cut down the growth too much. And because obviously QYLD and XYLD are just, there's no growth at all. Matter of fact, it might even decline. So I figured a little bit of money in there is not going to be a problem. And I really struggled with that for quite a few days, hours on end. I took them out, and I still after a year or two, because you got to understand, when I first retire, you're not gonna have any W-2 income coming at all. You might actually feel under the pressure to have income coming in, right? You don't know until you get there, right? So why not just have a little bit of money in those QYLDs, XYLDs to raise the yield up, to bridge the gap, make me feel a little bit better. I don't feel like it's a large risk there, and it's not really hurting the portfolio, but it is raising the income, it's raising the yield, and that's gonna make me feel better at the end of the day. After a year or two, I find out that I don't need the income or something like that. Guess what? I can cut XYLD out, I can cut QYLD out, and trust me, I will. And they'll go into other investments. Okay, so let's just talk about the DDRO here. Okay, so the DDRO here, I actually had SCHD in there at first. I took it out. I didn't like the holdings in it for what I'm trying to do. I still think it's a great freaking ETF, don't get me wrong, but DDRO I think encompasses what I'm trying to do. It has a wider diversity across 400 positions, and it has Apple, it has Microsoft and all those stocks in there, and I didn't really like the top 10 holdings in SHD for what I'm trying to do here. Okay, so ultimately what I'm going to do is, if the income's too much, including the actual options income and all that, I will start bleeding capital back into DDRO, still start building that out, and I can see 10 years down the road that could be a couple $100,000. As I start bleeding off some of these income funds, income ETFs, and start building out DGRO there. And the ultimate long-term strategy, I'm talking about 10, 15, 20 years down the road, I'll start bleeding that capital off, or excess capital off into VTI or VOO. All right, let's go over here to the solo 401k. So that, as it sat right now, the last time you've seen that account, it had all the exact same positions in it that my taxable account had in it. So I've posted a Twitter post saying, you know, the portfolio transformation begins, and guess what? I sold out of all those positions out of there, with the exception of Realty Income, because that is a REIT and it's not you know, qualified dividend, so I left it in the tax deferred account. And then I'm starting to go into QQQ. Okay, so right now there is capital into QQQ, over $30-something thousand in there. And my goal is to build that account up to roughly, you know, it's, you know, $194,000 right now. You know, those real estate notes. Once those real estate notes get paid back, that will all go into the Qs, okay? And then I'll start selling covered calls against those. So right now, eventually there's going to be $70,000 in the Qs. Okay, because that account has about $69,000 or something in it right now. But by the time I fire, it should be roughly about $72,000 to $78,000, somewhere around there. So I'll obviously have enough capital in the Qs at that time to start selling some covered calls against the Qs, and I'll have full control over that. And that'll be 2 contracts that I'll sell. But I'm not going to talk about the options until the very end. So as the real estate notes gets paid back, yes, I'll start buying and, you know, directing capital into the Qs. And obviously, you know, there's about $1,000, $1,100 that comes out of the note every single month. That will go right into the Qs. Okay. And you're thinking, okay, Dave, well, there's your growth, right? There is your growth. You don't have any income obviously coming in. It's just a very low dividend, right? $840 of income coming in, and most of that is generated from the real estate notes at this time, right? The yield is 7.68%. So once those get paid back, obviously that's going to cut the income quite a bit, but a lot of the income will be coming out of the covered calls, right? All right, and now let's talk about the IRA here. So right now, this account does not exist. Okay, I will be opening an IRA account with Schwab, because all these accounts are at Schwab, and then I will be opening an IRA at Schwab. And then once I retire in April of 2022, I'm gonna roll the 401k over to an IRA at Schwab. There's going to be roughly about $380,000 to $385,000 is what I project in that account. And all of that is going to go into SPY, okay? And just off of dividends alone, that generates $4,900 per year in dividends. And then this is a SEP account, or not a SEP account. I do plan on possibly SEPing that account. Substantial equal periodic payments, which is Rule 72T. So I may SEP that account if interest rates come up to about 2%, which will generate another about $10,000 of ordinary income that I can actually use over here. But it also can allow me to drain some capital out of that before RMDs start. And then also, so obviously that covers the growth aspect in SPY. I actually originally had QQQ over here, and then I thought, you know what, why do I want, QQQ here, QQQ here? So why not cover SPY? It covers part of the NASDAQ, and then we'll put the Qs over here, which will ultimately be about $200,000. And over here, we'll leave it in SPY, which I think is a little less risky than the Qs, okay? And then at the end of the day, we're gonna sell covered calls against the SPY. So with $380,000 in there, that'll be roughly about 8 contracts per month, per 45 days. And over here it's going to be roughly about 2 contracts at the $70,000, about a little over 76 I think is what it is. And then once that capital comes in there, I'll start selling up to 4 or 5 contracts at probably about a 15 delta. I feel like on the upside I get away with a 15 delta, which honestly is about $150 per contract. So that's a substantial amount of money, about what, $8,000 of just capital coming from options income just from this account alone. And this account be roughly about $600 or $700, $800 per month. You times that by you know, what is it, by 12 months, and you come out to $6,000, $7,000, something like that per year. So why, you know, originally I had QQQ in there, excuse me, originally I had QYLD in there, I originally had, you know, XYLD in there, JEPI, you know, all those, and it's like thinking to myself, why do I need those in those accounts? Especially if a lot of it's return on capital. It doesn't do me any good. They're all tax deferred accounts, right? Like I don't need the income. And actually, it's actually hurting me because I'm paying a higher expense ratio being in QYLD, XYLD, DIVO, JEPI and all those, and NUSI, you know, and all those. And not to mention, they're cutting the growth out aspect as well. So the growth is kind of a byproduct of what I'm doing here. Honestly, it was not the reason why I went this route at all. I went this route because I'm in full control of the options. And, you know, obviously the expense ratio is super low on SPY, it's super low on the Qs. And the reason why I went with SPY to begin with and not VTI, or in this case here in VU, is because VU has a higher expense ratio, but, excuse me, VU has a lower expense ratio. But the reason why is because there's super liquidity in SPY for options, okay? And the same with the Qs here, because I could have went with something else. I could have went with a Vanguard equivalent or something like that. But guess what? There's a lot of liquidity in Qs for options, okay? So SPY is one of the best ones for the S&P 500 for options, and the Qs is the best one for options for the NASDAQ. So that's the reason why I went those two options over a Vanguard fund, okay? Because the options are super liquid. And you try to do options on VTI or VU, and it's not as easy as on SPY or QQQ. So a byproduct of me switching from QYLD, XYLD, and going to QQQ and SPY is that I have some growth there, and I'm the one that's capping it off of doing the covered calls, right? Until 15 delta is still going to allow for about a 2 to 3% move in roughly 30 to 35 days, 45 days or so. So I'm in complete control over that. I don't have to do them if I don't want to, which I most likely will. And I talked about this many times before. I didn't want to run options in 3 different accounts. It's too much work, you know. But what I'm talking about here is because what I'm doing over my options account, my IB account. Okay, so here's my IB account right here. And what I've been doing in this account is not what I want to do in those 2 other Schwab accounts. It's too much work, okay? So yes, I sell options pretty much every single day. If we go back here to options activity, which is right here, this is all the stuff that's on right now. All the stuff that's not green is all the stuff that's on right now. So yes, I trade options in there every single day, and pretty much every day of the week. So for these 2 accounts here, I didn't want to do that. Okay, you know, $380,000. I could probably generate quite a bit of money from just doing options like I'm doing my IB account. But guess what? I didn't want to have to deal with that. So I feel like just doing options on SPY, you got to log in every 45 days or so, just sell some covered calls. This account, I got to log in every 45 days or so, sell some covered calls against Qs, and I'm done with it. I'm not going to think about it any longer. Okay, so ultimately, that brings the total income out to $88,000, and that's not including any options income at all. If I run options on this account, generate a measly $7,000 to $8,000, which should be pretty easy to do, and over here about $5,000 to $6,000. That's just say, let's just round it down to another $1,000 a month. That'll raise the income up to about $8,000, and then we actually add this another, another $3,000 per month. It's a lot of income, okay? And you're thinking, Dave, when you had the QYLD in there, it was like $130,000 to $140,000. Yeah, I get it, it was. But it also was costing me more in expense fees. It was also capping the upside as well. So now I have complete control over where I put those covered calls and when I sell them, whether I put them on, whether I take them off, when I take them off, when I put them on. I can even run a hedge if I want by protecting the downside if I want to even do that by doing a collar strategy like NUSI does, right? So yes, that will bring the total account value up to $2 million if I put this over there. So $2 million and income roughly about $10,000. And then obviously I don't have the covered calls shown over here, but it's about another $1,000 per month minimum, probably a little bit more than that, $14,000 or so. So that's another $1,000 a month. So still $11,000 a month coming in. Obviously this is all tax deferred stuff over here, but total income $124,000. So the income is roughly the same, but it's actually costing me less, right? So I don't have to pay the expense fees, and you know, the options over here are relatively pretty cheap in the Schwab account to put on. So I think going forward, this is the best strategy that I could come up with for me. It covers income, it covers growth, it covers dividends as well, which I will go into more as time goes on by getting into DGRO. And then as time goes on, I'll start filtering capital out of some of these other income ETFs out to VTI and VU. It's like a three-phased approach, right? I'll start out with income ETFs, I'll go into DGRO and more, maybe even individual stocks, you know, DIVO, and then I'll start filtering those out from DGRO into VTI or VU, which are all long-term holds, which I probably don't even need to touch, right? So this covers everything. Best thing I could come up with, low maintenance, covers growth, covers income, best strategy I could come up with, and I think that it covers everything. So if you have any questions, please leave a comment down below. I fumbled a lot of the words I've said, so hopefully it came across pretty smoothly. And over the next several months, we'll go ahead and complete the execution on this as time goes on. So please comment down below what you think of this strategy overall. If there's any changes that you think I should make or something like that, I'd love to hear it. So anyways, until next time, please go ahead and like and subscribe, and we'll see you next video. Thanks for watching.